Hi friends, it's Deanna here today, and today we're going to be sewing up the Felicia custom fit cup size dress. This dress is so flattering, so beautiful, and it can be customized by using your cup size. So this is great. This is a knit dress with two different kind of v-necks. There's a low v-neck and a higher v-neck. It's got a flutter sleeve and a flounce sleeve option, and it's got a beautiful skirt with a choice, an option of doing a slit on the side or not. So let's get started. All right, we're gonna get started with our bodice. This is my back and my front bodice, and my back and front bodice both have darts. And when I cut up my bodice, I went ahead and marked my darts by drawing a little picture on there. If you're doing a paper pattern, you can just cut out the dart and mark it. Or if you're doing a projector, make sure you project it and mark it to the wrong side of the fabric. And how I like to do darts is I'm gonna grab a pin and I'm gonna start at one edge of the dart and go to the next, come out at the other side of the dart. And then I'm going to grab, like pinch the dart and fold it. And then we're gonna go in and come out at the other side. So my pin is kind of marking where my dart is gonna go. And then do again on a little bit farther in. Make sure you're keeping it straight on the line. And here it is, my dart is marked. Then I can go to my sewing machine. We're going to start here at the outer end and go all the way down. When we're almost close to coming out here at the top, we're going to make that stitch a little bit smaller, like a 1.8, and then come all the way out the top. And don't back stitch here at the top because you don't want to have a back stitching pucker here. So we're going to do a straight stitch all the way down and then turn it, make it the smaller stitch and come all the way out. And we're going to do that for our bust darts and then our waist darts. And for the back, we've got waist darts and waist darts in the back. All right, let's go sew that up. All right, so we're gonna start at the one end. Remember to go ahead and move your pins. And as we get close to the edge, we're just gonna make that stitch a little bit smaller and come right out at the end. All right, once we've sewn those darts up, we're gonna grab here at the end and we're just gonna do like a couple little knots. We're not gonna tie them tight. We're just doing a couple little knots here to make sure that it's gonna stay, and then we can trim the extra allowance. I don't know where my scissors are, but I'll be doing that. So we're gonna do that for all of them. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and make sure you steam these really well with your iron. And make sure that if you have like a really nice sensitive fabric, you either put something on top of it before steaming, or you're just very careful with it. Then we're going to go ahead and match our shoulders right sides together here at the top. And we're going to sew those right sides together. And at the same time, I'm going to be prepping my neckband. So we're going to fold it right sides together at that short raw edge. And we want to make sure that we have our V-neck marked. So I marked it with my water soluble marker here, so I have it there. I'm going to head on over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew that V with a straight stitch. So I'm going to go down to the point, middle center point, pivot, and go up to the other side, and then we'll trim that after. All right, so we can start here at the corner, put your needle in and go down to that spot. Okay, when we get to the center point, we lift up our needle, turn our fabric, and go down to the other side. And that is how we make our V-neck, because then we'll trim it and we'll have our V-neck there. All right, next we're going to focus on our V-neck here. Like I said, we have sewn that, so we can trim that allowance all the way to the V, and then cut the sides and leave about a 1/4 inch seam allowance around that V. And sometimes you can, if you want to cut that out first and then sew around it, but it's so hard to sew around the seam allowance when it's a v-neck like this. But now we have it here. I'm gonna cut a little bit more. There we go. Don't trim the thread though. Then we're gonna open that up and steam that seam allowance open. Okay. Once that seam allowance is open, we can fold it over and fold our neckband wrong sides together all the way around. I did not have my iron all the way hot, and I'm trying to steam with an iron that's not all the way hot, so it has spit water at me. It's okay. Alright, now once the neckband is done and prepped, you can go ahead and baste it together. It's up to you if you want to baste it together. Then here at the neckline, you can make a mark, and I won't be able to see it very well, but about 1/4 inch away from the seam, so like create the seam allowance here at the v-neck, and mark your center point, like with a pin or something, because what we're going to do is we're going to grab our neckband and we're going to face it right onto that point right there. So the center point is going to match up to the center point of our neckband. So see how that neckband line is there, and there is the pin. I'm just going to pin it right there. So that's my center point there. And what we're going to do, so if you can see here, that's my center point there. We're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to tilt this neckband over and sew about 1 inch or 2 from the edge, and just sew down straight to the point, and at that point pivot, and then sew the other side of the neckband on about 1 inch or 2 here to attach that v-neck. Let's go do that on my sewing machine. I'll show you. All right, so I'm going to pivot this over, make sure my sides are touching, and I've got my 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and I'm going down to the pin. Now don't step on the pin because it can break your needle, but you want to go all the way down to the center point. And you may want to crank your wheel by hand. Then we're going to lift up your foot, grab the band, and turn it to the other way, so we can finish sewing that edge. All right, now when you turn it, you can go ahead and trim that again here at the end, or you may have already trimmed it first, so that when you open it, you have that nice v-neck here. Okay, I don't know if you can see it with my right there. V-neck. Okay, so now we're going to finish up that neckband by folding it from the back to the front and finding the back, from the front to the back, whatever. And then we're going to match up our front and back. So where I mark the front, when I mark the back to the front, and go to the sides. And we want to 1/4 our neck area as well. So we're going to match up our front and go to their back, and then again match the front and back and go to the sides. Now I'm going to go ahead and match up my neckband right sides together along those notches that I created. So match up the sides, the back, all of it. And then we're going to go over to our sewing machine or our serger and sew it up with a stretch stitch. I'm going to be using my serger, but if you don't have a serger, you can sew it up with zigzag stitch, triple stitch, lightning bolt stitch, any kind of stretch stitch on your sewing machine. We're going to start here at the neck, and we're going to kind of stretch a little bit so it fits, and sew and go all the way around and come right back out the neck area. Now if you want to go on to the next step, which a lot of times I like to just go on to the next step, we can go ahead and fold over here and match up our side seams. And then we can go ahead and sew that up at the same time. That way we're ready for our next step, which will be our sleeves. I'm doing the flutter sleeve. So I can go ahead and prep that flutter sleeve as front. Start over. I can go ahead and prep that flutter sleeve as well. What I'm going to do with the flutter sleeve is I'm going to gather one of the sides. So let me show you. I've got my flutter sleeve here, and we're going to gather this curved edge. So I'm just gonna put in a long straight stitch that I can gather that up when I go to connect it. So I'm going to do that to both of my flutter sleeves. I'm also going to be doing binding for my like to encase my flutter sleeve. So there's binding on my armscye. So I'm going to grab those armband for binding and sew them right sides together here at the raw edge. You know what? You don't need to do all this at once. I just like to. But you can do one step at a time and come back to the next one. For some reason, I like to prep everything. And I'm like already thinking, I'm going to prep that skirt. But I'm like, no, I can't do it because we got to do one step at a time. But comment below and let me know what you do. Do you prep everything at the same time? If I am sewing, to be honest, if I'm sewing something by myself, I'm going to prep everything and then sew it together. Like I would prep the skirt, I would prep everything and then come back and put it all together. I don't know why I always do that. What do you do? Do you prep everything at the same time or do you sew as you go? Let me know. Like I said, for my neckband, I'm going to start here at the front and I'm just going to go put it down and stretch my neckband to fit. Make sure that all my edges are touching and so. And I do the same for the next quarter point and all the way around. And that is what it looks like on the inside, and on the other side it's just my v-neck. Alright, so I lengthened my stitch to like a 4 and then I lengthened my tension to about an 8 because sometimes I like to go ahead and lengthen my tension to give me a little bit of gather. I'm going to pull a little bit of thread here at the end so it's good for gathering, and then we're just going to baste them together. But you can really gather with whatever method of gathering you prefer. And then leave a tail at the end. But see how upping that tension, it already gave me a little bit of a gather. So I like to do that. Okay, make sure to return your settings to your normal settings or you will be kicking yourself later. I've done that many times. All right, now time for sleeves. I'm doing the flutter sleeve. So if you're doing the flounce sleeve, you'll have like a circle and you'll literally just fit the circle right in there, right sides together and pin all the way around. But the flutter is a little bit different. So we are going to go ahead and fit that flutter in there, right sides together as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to start about 1.25 to 2 inches away from the seam. And we're going to place that ruffle in there. Okay. And then we're going to start clipping it. Now make sure that your ruffle, your flutter is gathered the amount that it needs to be gathered. So like kind of find the top of the flutter here. So I like to find the top and then the bottom. And then make sure it's going to fit. So you may have to pull that basting stitch more, gather it a little bit more, or loosen it up depending on how tight you did that gather. Okay, so there's one side and we're going to do the same on the other side. Remember at the end you're ending about 1.5 to 2 inches away from that seam, and we're going to baste that ruffle on because if you want to, you can go ahead and sew it on and you'll have an exposed seam there. But if you don't want an exposed seam, that's what I'm doing with my bands, and we're going to sew that together after. So basting helps the ruffle not to fall off as I'm trying to add the band. So we're going to go ahead and baste that first. You all know I don't like to baste very much, but this is an important step right now because you don't want those ruffles gathers to shrink into the fabric and fall, and then you'll have a gap and it'll just be annoying. So basting is a necessary step to do here. All right, let's go baste those on. Alrighty, the flutters are basted on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the bodice right side out. And we're gonna fold those flutters right sides together with the bodice. So you can see the wrong side of the flutters here. And we're gonna grab this band out. If you don't care about the raw edge, you can just leave that edge, you know, you can just sew it together and you'll have that seam right there. But if you want to cover it up, that's what the band is for. So what you're going to do is you're going to fit this band in. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and half it. So mark the half. And we're going to match up that bottom seam here to the bottom of the sleeve, the armscye. And then I'm going to match up the top where that mark is to where the shoulder seam is. And we're encasing those gathers into, those gathers or the flounce, whatever you're doing, into this band. So we're just going to match it up so that those raw edges are here matching. So you're making a shirt or a sleeve and gather or ruffle sandwich or flutter if you're doing a flutter. So you're sandwiching those between there, and then we're going to sew them up. So you would have that binding, it's touching, would be touching right, it's facing right sides together with the sleeve. And then the ruffle is facing right sides together with the sleeve. And the ruffle is just sandwiched in. All right, and we're gonna sew that up with a stretch stitch. All right, let's go sew that up. All right, now on the inside, look at how good that looks by the flutter. See, so this facing is gonna end up hiding this seam allowance here. So you could leave that raw. You don't have to do this, but that just makes it look so much better. So now we're going to flip this around. And what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch this onto the bodice. So we're pulling it all the way to hide. We're going to pull that seam allowance, hide that seam allowance. Whoop. Let me trim this because it's going to get cut in there anyway. So we're going to pull it to hide that seam allowance. And then we're going to, with the out of the way, we're going to top stitch it down to cover that seam allowance there. So you can do it either, actually let's leave it right side out because I want to top stitch it from the top obviously. So you can fold it, you can steam it and close it so you're encasing. If you look over here, you're encasing that seam allowance, then we'll just have to trim the extra. Now, if you didn't want to trim the extra, you can always fold it once and then fold it again and just top stitch it like a binding. That is up to you, but I like to just trim away the excess because, I don't know, it's easier, I think. So, let's go do that. Let's go do that. Now, for top stitching this, you want to do that with any kind of stretch stitch on your sewing machine, like a zigzag stitch or a triple stitch. A triple stitch is a really nice stitch. It's like it almost looks like a straight stitch. It's pretty close to a straight stitch. A lightning bolt stitch, however you want to do it, because you want this to have stretch. You know, this is going to go through your arm, so this is a knit garment. You want it to stretch. So if you do a straight stitch that doesn't have stretch, the stitches are going to pop. So you want a stretch stitch. And I'm probably just going to do my cover stitch over there. So that's what I'll do. Now, I have white thread on my cover stitch, and some of you might be like, oh no, white thread. I don't know. Maybe I'll look and see if I have some, I had some like tan color. Maybe I'll do that, like a beige color. That might blend in more than the white. But I don't know if I do or not. Alright, so let's go top stitch that. Okay, make sure that your flutter is out of the way as you're top stitching that down. Alright, I did change my thread and I think it made all the difference. You can barely see the top stitching, and on the other side you can kind of see the under stitching, but it's not very much. And if you just did it with a stretch stitch on your sewing machine, you may not even be able to see it. Now with scissors, we're going to clip away all the extra allowance of that, pushing the bodice away, so you're not going to cut anything you don't want to cut. This is the scary part. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around. Alright, so that is encased. Your seam is encased in the allowance, and it looks so good. So good. See that? It looks so much better than having a raw seam right there. Alright, we're going to move on to the skirt. Now I am doing the slit version right now. So if you're not doing the slit version, you can skip this part and go straight to the side seams. So I've got my front side A and B, and I marked here what the side is that I'm going to attach, and I also marked my slit, where my slit is supposed to start. So here's my other piece, and obviously that also has a notch right there where it's supposed to start, so we're going to match up those notches here and go all the way down, sewing right sides together. We're going to sew all the way up. So if you're using a sewing machine, you'll sew right up to that spot where the slit's going to start. If you're using a serger, you're going to sew up to like about an inch away from that spot, because we're going to have to sew it a little bit different. We're going to have to use our machine because we're going to split our hem open. So we're going to sew all the way down here. Again, serger, you stop about an inch away from the point. Sewing machine, you stop right at the point where your slit's going to be. Alright, here's my mark here. I'm going to stop an inch away from that. Now here, I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to finish up until that mark with a straight stitch. So I'm just going to go up to that mark, coming right off this where I finish, and go down. I'm just going to do a back stitch right there. Okay. All right, once we've got that sewn right here, we're going to go right here where we started that seam. As you can see, I hope you can see, I started right off the edge of my serged edge and went down. Well, right at that serged edge, we're going to just split that open a little bit. So I'm just going to like open it up right there, and that way we can grab our iron and open up that slit to create a hem. So we're going to open that up right there, and we're going to steam it open. Now we're not going to hem yet because we're just going to hem everything together at the end, but we're just going to give it a nice memory crease here. Once again, I don't think my iron is all the way hot yet. It had turned off while I was doing all the other stuff, and I just turned it on, but you get the gist. Okay, I'll come back and steam that really nicely later when I'm gonna hem it. But that is how you do your split hem. So easy right there. Let's continue to finish up the skirt. I'm so excited. All right, now we're gonna grab our back skirt. It's really big on here, so I can't really, it's hard to show you. This is the waist up here, and here's my two sides. Here's one side here, and the other side over here. And then we're gonna place our front skirt that now is pieced together, and we're gonna place one side against the raw edge here, right sides together, and then the other side match it right sides together. And then we're gonna go sew that with or serger or a stretch stitch on your sewing machine. All right, we are almost done. All we gotta do is go ahead and grab our skirt and just steam the hem. So I'm gonna show you right here. Here's my slit right here where I started that slit. So we're gonna top stitch that as the hem, and then we're gonna keep going all the way around our skirt. So we're gonna fold it over to our hem and hem all the way around. So we'll go kind of like all the way around, up and over and all the way around the whole skirt as we hem. And so let's do that. And then we're going to attach our skirt to our bodice, and we'll be done. And attaching our skirt to our bodice, it's super easy because it just fits right into our bodice. But it is really recommended, like highly, strongly, I'm telling you, you really need it, recommended that you use clear elastic at the waist. And the reason being is because, you know, skirts are kind of heavy, and this being that this is not a gathered skirt, it's just a regular straight skirt, but it's still heavy skirt because it's, you know, like a little flared skirt. You're going to have that weight of the fabric pulling down on your bodice, and it's going to make your bodice all warpy and longer, and, you know, you can be like, oh, just kind of annoyed by it. Well, clear elastic is the solution. And all you have to do, you don't have to stretch the clear elastic or anything. You just have to attach it as you're sewing that seam. And I'm going to show you how I do it on my serger. And you can do it on your sewing machine as well. But if you're kind of scared, because it can be a little bit intimidating, you can always stitch it to your seam first. So like stitch it to the seam of the bodice, zigzag stitch it onto the bodice first, and then connect the bodice and the skirt together if that's what you would rather do. It is really up to you, but I'm telling you that clear elastic, I'm in love. If you can see this huge roll of clear elastic I have here, that's how much I love clear elastic. I have a huge roll of it because I use it all the time. It just helps stabilize the dresses and tops and everything, and it just makes things look a little nicer. And if you are to look into your store-bought clothing, you'll see that a lot of it has elastic enforcing the casing or enforcing the seams. That way it doesn't look all frumpy. So this is a lot of hemming. Let me finish this up, and then I'm going to show you how to put the bodice and the skirt together, and we'll be done. All right, you can go ahead and go hem first, but I'm just going to do both of them at the same time. So I'm going to grab my skirt, and as you see, you've got the two side seams, and then you've got that front slit seam. Don't think about that slit seam. You want to fold it, the two side seams, match the two side seams together and go to the front and back, because that slit is going to be like in the side front, like where the leg is. So you don't have to worry about that. That's not going to do anything for attaching the skirt, the bodice, when we're attaching them together. Don't even worry about that seam right there. Then we're going to grab our bodice, and we're going to match up those side seams as well, and we're going to go to the front and the back. Now, you need to make sure that the slit is the front. So we're going to grab our bodice and face the front up, and I'm going to fit it right into my skirt. And I'm going to match up those notches. So the side seams, the front and the back. Now if you're stubborn and you're like, I'm not going to do clear elastic, well, that's up to you, and you are, you know, entitled to do it however you want it. This is your sew. You would just sew this regularly. But if you are listening and you want to add the clear elastic, I'm going to show you how I do it. I just bring it over and I feed it through as I'm sewing it. So I'm going to show you. So easy. All right, so I've got my clear elastic here. I'm just going to put it anywhere. It doesn't really matter. I'm not cutting it because I'm not going to pull on it. Well, I am going to pull on it, but I'm not really going to tug on it. And I like to usually start my seam in the back. So I'm looking to where the front is. Here's my back. And I'm going to fit that into my serger. Again, you could be doing this on a sewing machine as well if you would like to. I'm going to grab my clear elastic and just place it right where that seam is going to be. And make that needle get right on my elastic. Okay? And honestly, all I'm doing is just making sure my bodice and my dress and everything are all aligned. Okay? And then I'm placing my elastic right over the seam allowance. So my elastic is going to get encased in the seam allowance. A bit of my dress cut in there, make sure it's all good. I'm not really even pulling my elastic, I'm just holding it taut. So I'm just kind of holding it taut on there. And it's getting encased. So if you are to look in that seam, you can't really see it because it's inside of there. You can see right here where it starts well, it starts right there. I'm gonna have to run over that part right there. I don't know why. Anyway, but you can see that it's in there. You see it right there? Missed a little piece of my fabric in there, so I gotta run over that. But that's exactly what you have to do. Not leaving the gap, but sewing it into the gap. All right, now we're gonna hem all the way around and we'll be done. All right, friends, we are done. Look at this dress. I love the slit. I did bring it down a little bit because that's my preference, but I think it looks adorable. This is the midi length. I think it's so cute with the high V and the flutter sleeves. I love the fit. So good. I hope you love this. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Please comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Go grab your pattern, come set up with me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.